Hey friends, it's Joe here. Welcome to another episode of In the Mix. Today I'm going to talk about how I treat my stereo bus.
You ever been into somebody and they just won't return your phone call? Well, this song is for you.
Okay, so I'm in my mix room and I have Beck Black, Don't Call Me Darling, pulled up. I guess it's actually Darlene, because we got a little bit of a retro country thing mixed with some rock. She's an LA artist that really wants everything aggressive, but she still wanted to do a country tune, and I think it turned out really fun. I actually really liked it. In fact, it was the first song I ever recorded with the new WA-251, and I thought her vocals sounded great, as you will hear. So really excited. But what I want to do today is I want to show you what I'm going to do on the stereo bus, how I treat a stereo bus. And this is really indicative of what I do very often. So I want to give you a breakdown here. Okay, from the very beginning, I'm going to be mixing through my first plug-in, which is going to be some type of a saturation type device. In this case, it's Plug-in Alliance, Brainworks, it's the black box. And I have fallen in love with this. For years mixing on an analog console, we got used to mixing into the stereo bus, and the stereo bus was giving us something back. It was compressing or I've heard the word bend or fold or whatever. It was doing something to our signal. It was saturating in a way that we found pleasing, and then when we started mixing in the box, all of a sudden that wasn't there. So a plug-in like this really goes a long way. This is basically the settings I use. I'm not hyping any frequency range, although I occasionally do switch that to high. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be flat. And I start with the saturation somewhere in here, like on my little preset, and I'll just dial that saturation number up to hit it where I want to hit it. And this plugin has never failed me in the last couple months of using it. I've really fallen in love with it. And then I bring up a bus compressor. In this case, I'm using the Plug-in Alliance, the Brainworks Townhouse. This is basically like a modified version of an SSL. It's a VCA compressor. I really like VCA compressors on my stereo bus. I like the way that they give me a little snap if I want it, or a little glue, or even both. And this compressor has some attitude, and so does this song, and that's why I chose it for this song. Okay, so then I come over here to my tube EQ from Warm Audio, the eqp-wa. What it does, it's a passive circuit tube design, based on a vintage model. Passive circuits by nature have the sweetest high end that you can imagine, but it's not just that. On the low end here, I get this trick where you can boost and you can cut at the same time, and what that does is because the filter shapes are different of the boost and the cut, you get this wonderful like size out of it. You get this nice big fullness that doesn't muddy the waters, so to speak. Your mix doesn't get muddy. It just gets bigger and more solid sounding on the bottom end. So what I do here is I choose like something way down, like 30 cycles, maybe even 60, but not any higher than that, because this is a broad stroke circuit. If we choose 100, for example, we're reaching octaves well above there. And then I definitely don't want my lower mids to get muddy or changed. I've carefully carved them at this point. So what I want to do is, today I'm setting it down to 30 cycles. I'm boosting a couple dB and cutting 1 dB. So I get just a little more bottom end, but I also get that overlapping filter size. All right, then just a couple dB on the top end of 12K for that really sweet air. And not only that, I'm also driving my signal through the tubes a little bit hard. I really like what that does to the sound. Okay, so now I'm back in the box up here. Let's take a look at the next plug-in, which is the last plug-in. This is, if you've watched any of my other videos, you've noticed this is a big favorite. In fact, if you look at the top row of my mixer here, it's a very common go-to tool for me. This is Acoustica Taupe, and it's a tape machine emulation. And on tracks up in here, I'm going to be using like multi-track emulations. In this case, I'm using like a 2-track stereo, a 30 IPS emulation. And I just really like what this does. And one really cool thing, as you dial through these emulations, it's going to show you like the frequency response, what it's actually doing to your sound, and it's always going to make it better practically. So that is my entire chain. After that, it's going to be sent out to mastering. I'm not going to use brick wall limiting, any of that kind of stuff. I want a professional that does mastering and only mastering to handle my tracks, give it, the last listen in a third party that's never heard it before, go over it one last time. So what I'm going to do, and Pro Tools doesn't support hardware bypass, so I'm just going to have to get rid of it here. I'm going to play you the stereo mix going through my stereo bus with this guy on. I'm not going to mute him because he's always on in the beginning. All my decisions that throughout the mix are made with him. So I'm going to play you the mix without my compression, without my EQ, or without my tape emulation. Okay, here we go.
Don't call me darling, call me on the phone. You would call me.
Okay, it's great. I like it a lot, but let's unbypass my compressor here. Let's put back on my warm audio EQs. Let's put on my tape machine. Let's take a look at what they're doing, okay?
Don't call me darling, call me on the phone. You would call me.
Okay, it sounds better, right? Let me show you what the compressor's doing. You need to see how much. What I'm doing is ratio is 2 to 1. I'm not looking for a lot of dynamic. Every once in a while, I will switch to 4, but I'm not looking for dynamic control as much as I'm just looking for that glue. You'll see my attack is set to 10 milliseconds. My release is set to auto. I'm pretty much just going to use 2 releases on the SSL style, compression. It's either going to be automatic for like the glue, the smear, or the fastest if I want the ultimate punch. Song like this, I'm looking for that glue. So I'm going to show you. It's only getting a couple dB of compression here.
Don't call me darling, call me on the phone.
That's what I'm doing. It's not a lot, but it is making a difference. Every one of these little things add up to make a significant difference. And one last thing I want to talk about is that's gain staging. On your stereo bus, and this is getting more and more common even with plugins, but especially when you're interfacing outboard compressors or equalizers or something like that, you want to make sure that you are, analog 0 is minus 18 in your DAW. So you want your VU, some people even run a VU meter. I don't, I can tell just by looking what I'm just used to the Pro Tools meters, I guess. But I'm going to try to get around minus 18 as my average. And then when I'm using something like these warm audio EQs that again, like I talked about earlier, I really want those tubes to do their thing. I'm going to push it a couple dB beyond that, maybe 3, maybe I go to minus 15 for my average, maybe I go to minus 13. As long as it sounds good and I'm not clipping, I'm not afraid to push the tubes in that that unit, because the mix just gets bigger and fuller and better sounding. Okay guys, so that's it. That's what I'm doing to the stereo bus. It's not a lot of plugins. You've probably seen guys online, showing you 8, 9, 10 different stages. I don't need that. I don't need all that to get what I'm looking for. I need some saturation. I need a little compression, a little EQ, a little tape saturation, and I'm done. And these plugins and this hardware, they're giving me what I need. And it's making everything just a little bit better than it was before it hit my stereo bus. I'm really happy with this. I hope you guys are too. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. All right, guys, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Hey, if you would, follow Warm Audio on their social media pages for all the most current information on our program, as well as, if you would, follow me on my own social media at In The Mix with Joe Carrell. We're going to have extra footage, extra content that I hope you guys really enjoy. Okay, now here's Beck Black singing Don't Call Me Darling.
You ever been into somebody